All right, friends, time for the hands-free drive to work, because you know you can keep your hands on the wheel and at the very same time have a conversation about steering yourself through the weeds of work. That's right, we're talking about how to manage ourselves well, to be great self-managers. We've said it multiple times. We'll never act differently until we learn how to decide differently. We'll never decide differently until we learn how to think differently. And so we started with how we think. We've talked about that a lot. We've answered the question, and how do we think different? We answer this major question: what is the guiding purpose of work? And we talked about that. It's meeting the needs of the neighbors and the communities that we serve with our work. We know that a met need always comes before any profits or incentives that come back to me as I'm managing myself well. And then we said we got to decide differently. And so we said the question there is not what do we do, but it's who achieves that purpose. Who achieves that purpose of meeting needs before profits and incentives? And we said that we had to ask it that way because we learned that we make decisions not from a pros and cons list often, but we often make decisions based on our identity. And so we need to say who achieves that purpose, identify the character traits that person actually possesses, and then we start to develop those character traits ourselves, and we can make entirely different, new, and better decisions. With new decisions come new possibilities. And so then third, we said, now we're to the point where most of us want to go immediately. Just tell me what to do. If you'll just tell me what to do, I'll go do it. But we know until we answer the first two questions, we can never actually not go from thinking to acting if we don't learn how to decide differently in the middle. So that's why the order of those questions matter just as much as the questions themselves. But here we are. How do we act differently? How do we act differently than people around us? And we said it's kind of like these road signs that kind of just pop up and remind us of some things during the day. We would do these naturally. We wouldn't need these road signs if we really focused on meeting the needs of others before we meet the needs of ourselves. We really wouldn't need these signs. But sometimes we all know that if we're trying to get somewhere in a hurry, we need a sign that says, hey, speed limit 35 right here. So this is another one of those road signs, and it's a tough one for us. This one's a tough one, and this is the road sign. Celebrate, don't tolerate authority. Learn to celebrate authority, not just tolerate authority. And I know first thought, you're like, come on now. I thought I was supposed to be managing me. This sounds like somebody's trying to control me. I don't like that. So listen, it is. Remember, this is you managing you. This is Casey managing Casey. I'm not telling you to listen to my authority. I'm saying for each one of us to learn to celebrate the authority that is actually in our lives. And as I thought about this morning, actually, just a little funny story. Anna Brooks, my little girl, she said, she's the youngest one, and I got to take her to school this morning. Allie had an appointment. And so Anna Brooks was like, Daddy, I don't get it. And I was like, what, buddy? I don't know what's going on in her little brain. She just, out of the blue while we're driving, she said, I don't get it. She said, Rapunzel, it says, Mother knows best. I said, yeah, that's right. She said, yeah, but really, dads know best. And of course, I told her she was right. I'm just kidding. I did not tell her she was right. I said, yeah, that's right. Mamas can know best and daddies can know best. And we talked through that together. But she's grappling with this idea of authority and really multiple sources of authority in her life. But really, if we think about it, if we think about authority a little bit differently, if we learn to celebrate it, not tolerate authority, I know for me, it changed a lot about how I manage myself through the weeds of work. And really early on in my career, I found myself, I didn't think I had a problem with authority. I didn't know this about me, but I found myself, when this really hit home, I was under the leadership of a strong leader. He was leading in a direction, and I thought, man, if I was him, I'd do so many things differently. And then I was actually, at the very same time, this had to hit me from three angles. So at the very same time, I had started volunteering in an organization, and there was a leader there, and he was a strong leader, and he was going in a certain direction. And then at the same time, I found myself, I thought the relationship with this older gentleman started as maybe like an accountability partnership. I thought we were just being accountable to each other. And then he started giving me like homework, and it turned into like a mentorship. And so at the very same time, all three of these things were happening. And I began to notice something, that there were only a very few individuals that I had a problem with in my life. And all three of those individuals who I had a problem with or who I felt tension when I was around, all three of them happened to have some authority over me. I started to realize, good grief, these are the only people that I have a problem with. So the problem can't be them. The problem must be me. Of course, that's hard to admit sometimes. That was a big confrontation in my head. I tried to justify it in 100 ways. No, it's just their leadership. Surely it's them. Surely it's them. Surely it's them. And then I'm like, I don't have a problem with anybody else in my life except for the people who have authority over me. It must be that I have an authority problem. And it actually is true. I did and can still. And I think if we're all honest, a lot of times this can be a problem for us if we do want to step out and lead and we do want to make a positive difference, then challenging us, with authority sometimes can be a difficult thing. But what I learned is that if you celebrate it, not just tolerate authority, it can really change the way you even look at it, and it can change the way you manage yourself through any situation. So authority is not just that's the first thing I realized about authority is it's not just something to control me, it's actually something to protect me. It's not just something to control, it's actually there to protect. And so if I see authority as protection, there are things that somebody in authority over me, they're responsible for certain decisions. They have to step out and do certain things, and when they do, I'm under their leadership umbrella. The people that I lead, I tell them sometimes, listen, if you do what I ask you to do and it doesn't work out, do you know whose fault it is? It's my fault. It's really protection to consider ourselves under authority. And so if I start to see it as protection, I'm like, okay, that gets a little bit different now. It's not that I'm just tolerating it and saying, okay, it's there, I have to get through it. But now I can actually celebrate it because I can say, at the end of the day, when somebody's held accountable, if I'm the leader, when somebody's held accountable, it's on me. It's not on the people that I lead that we are successful in an organization. It's on me. And so in the same way, I learned that, with those three individuals, I thought, man, if my success, if I follow their leadership and I do what they ask me to do and then I fail, it's really protection. They're really saying, hey, follow me. And if it doesn't work out, I'll take the accountability. You don't have to. So it's protection. So then I learned to think through that a little differently. And now I'm like, okay, authority's actually good. Authority is a really good thing. But then authority's also, again, thinking about it a little differently, authority also has to be permission. And so that's why I said, don't worry when you think, okay, authority, you're trying to control me. I don't like being controlled. Don't do that to me. See, it's actually you giving permission to someone to lead you. And that's why it's still self-management. I have to give somebody permission to have authority over me, unless they, obviously, beat me. We don't do that at work. And so I have to give, as I manage myself well, I have to give people permission to have authority over me. And when I do, when I realize that, it's like, no, this is not slavery. I'm not enslaved right now. I can actually go do something different if I needed to, or if I don't want to be under this authority, I don't have to be under this authority. But when I see it as permission, I'm actually managing myself and giving this person permission to have authority over me. And again, I'm not talking about leadership right now. I'm not talking about leading others. This is all how we think through leading ourselves through these weeds of work. And if we do that, if we realize that authority is protection, and if we realize that to give somebody authority is still me giving permission for them to lead, now I look at it a little differently and I start to celebrate authority, not just tolerate authority. And think about all the implications. Take a minute after you watch this video and just think about all the implications of being able to celebrate this the new way of thinking about authority. If you really start to celebrate it and lean in and say, okay, I'm in. So if this person who has authority over me asks me to do something, I'm going to look at it as protection, and I'm going to actually go out and move in that direction. I'm going to do it. I'm going to celebrate the authority that they have over me. And if we do that, one, we'll be very different than the people around us. But two, think about the productivity. Think about the engagement that we can have in the work at hand when we're all, if sometimes that leader knows things that we need to do, and maybe we don't actually see it at the time. I know there's been times in my life that I don't see what I need to do next. And so when somebody tells me, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this, even though I don't see it. One of my good buddies, AJ, just told me this the other night. He said when he was in Alcoholics Anonymous, he said, I realized that a lot of my own decisions were taking me down a path that I didn't want to go. He said, so I got a mentor in my life. I got a sponsor in my life. And he said, I started to do what this guy said to do. And if he told me to do it, I just did it, because I realized that his decisions for me actually turned out better for me than my decisions turned out for me in the past. And see, that's how we can learn to start to make these new and better decisions if we learn to accept and celebrate just some authority. And AJ gave him permission. It wasn't control. It wasn't, lording over him. AJ gave him permission in his life to be a leader in his life. And then he celebrated that authority instead of just trying to tolerate it. And it's changed. AJ is a different man than he was 2 years ago. I wish you could meet him. He's unbelievable. So think about this today. Think about some ways in your life. If there's some leaders in your life that rub you the wrong way, just consider. Again, this is self-management. I'm not leading you. I want you to lead yourself this way. Just consider, maybe I have a problem with authority. Maybe I need to learn to celebrate it and not tolerate authority. And as always, I'd love for you to write something in the comments. Maybe something you learned, something you're learning about authority, something that has helped you in the past about authority, because we all need to learn from each other. Thank you for listening to the Hands Free Drive to Work.